Hello, this is the 16th episode of the CamerataCast. This is Andres Marquez, your host as always, and today I have with me seasoned session recording music artist Evan Mykl. Why don't you introduce yourself and kind of like a little introduction to your career?
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. It's nice to virtually meet you, kind of, Andres. We've been talking through Instagram here for a bit. Uh, but yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm Evan, uh, owner and runner of the Spacemint recording studio here in LA in Highland Park, just off the 110 freeway. And I've been in LA for 10 years. I actually just hit the 10-year mark, which is kind of crazy to think about. But I came out here to be a session bassist and get into the music industry, and I went to music school initially 10 years ago, LA Music Academy. It was called then. Now it's LA College of Music.
Mhm.
Um, Went there for a year and a half and just started gigging from there. Joined a bunch of bands, and for about, I'd say, 5 years after that, I was just gigging like constantly, playing in numerous bands and kind of all over Southern California and to other states, and then slowly started to do some different short tours and stuff like that. Um, I've always had a huge interest in recording, and always had a home setup, and always been learning and continuing to figure that part out too. Um, and so at 3 years ago now, I ended up going back to school for audio engineering at Musicians Institute, and opened my home studio here about 2 years ago, and just been putting a lot of work into that and growing that, which has totally saved my ass. If Can I swear on this, by the way? Or
That's totally fine. Say
you gonna
whatever. Say
bleep
whatever
me
comes to
out?
mind.
Gonna bleep me out?
No, no, you're good.
Yeah. So it saved my behind this last year. Just having having the home setup, being able to record at home and do mixing and mastering and different things remotely. It's been just amazing to be able to have that. If I was still gigging constantly, I mean, I plenty of people that I know, friends and colleagues, totally had just such a huge change. I mean, we all had a change. But anyway, yeah, I've got this great setup here. Just super lucky and fortunate to have this awesome setup in Highland Park, and been working with a ton of local artists and stuff like that. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of wanted to get into that a bit. Your studio, Spacemint. I first heard about you and the work that you do in your space from Carboratum, who had recorded at your recording studio. Big shout out to them. Awesome local kind of indie rock alt band. And I wanted to ask how, I suppose, how you got into this business of recording folks. Like, is this first off, would you consider this like a main part of what you consider your career, or would this be sort of like a side hustle? How do you feel this factors into what you do as an artistic professional?
Sure, that's a good question. Well, just real quick, the band technically that was in the studio was 2 Hour Shower,
Oh shit! Oh my
which
god!
I think is shares some members with.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
is that how you pronounce it?
Yes,
Carboratum?
Carboratum. Yeah, Mars is a member in both bands, and I guess he
Right.
must have just flipped them around.
That's all right. I'm here to make sure we're putting out the right info, so it's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, 2 Hour Shower was in the studio. When was that? A couple months ago, a few months ago, and they were super fun dudes. Ended up mixing one of their tracks, but we recorded like, I want to say 10 songs, 12 songs, or something like that. But anyway, yeah, the studio is definitely like my main thing now. I would say it started out as like I mean, I was transitioning into it because I was full-time bassist. I mean, yeah, full-time bassist for the last 10 years, teaching and gigging and sessions. And then I, so for like 5 years, I was doing like 125 gigs a year
Whoa.
with like a bunch of different bands, and a lot of them were cover bands. At near the end, a lot of them were cover bands where we were doing like anywhere from 3, 4, 5 sets per gig. A lot of times 3 or 4 nights a week, and it was just really those gigs are marathons. They was
Oh yeah.
really showing up physically. I was just kind of degrading physically
God.
as time went by. I'm still kind of like working my way back from that in a way, but I just knew I never really got into music thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be just a touring musician. Uh, it just those were the that was what was available when I got out of music school
Hmm.
was there were just gigs, and I was just like, oh, I'll just get as busy as I can with music and with bands, and everybody needs a bass player, right? So uh, I had plenty of offers, at least especially when I was very cheap coming out of school,
Yeah.
and I was over the time I was kind of able to. My first goal was to like make enough money, just on music. So I was able to like trade out lesser paying gigs for higher paying gigs over, the next number of years.
Hmm.
Um, and but my goal was never to just like tour all the time. So I had always kind of had that in the back of my mind that I wanted to do more studio stuff. I wanted to produce. I wanted to collaborate and write. And so I that was always in the back of my mind, but I never knew like how I was going to do it or when. And it was like, oh, I'll just when I'm an old man, then I'll have a studio. And now suddenly I'm 36, and I'm like, I have a studio. Whoa, this is crazy. Um, but basically, yeah, I once I went back to for audio engineering, I was like, okay, I'm gonna transition into this being at least like the bulk of what I do, the main thing, and instead of the side hustle.
Hmm.
And kind of now I feel like the gigs, well, especially now because there's like no gigs. Although I have my first gig in the past year, just booked for next Saturday, which should be interesting.
Oh damn.
Um, but since there haven't been gigs and stuff, I feel like that's kind of the side hustle now.
Yeah.
So it's just like grabbing it. I'll definitely grab gigs here and there, but I'm planning on being more choosy with it,
Hmm.
especially now that I'm getting busier and busier with the studio stuff. So yeah, studio is now my main thing. I've got a bunch of other little side hustles with teaching and gigging, working on. I work with this. I'll give them a little shout out. Nomadic Guitar Repair and Lessons. I've been helping out there for a while. My buddy Steve, who's a badass guitar repair guy and guitar teacher, and so I've been helping out there. That's a side hustle kind of thing too. So it's like it kind of all uh, transformer puts together for like a career.
Yeah, that's insane. There are just so many different pieces that make up this working life of yours.
Kind of. I mean, I like it that way, honestly, because any one of these things, full like if I was doing 40 or 60 hours of just one of the things that I do, I think I would just get totally burnt out
Ah,
on it
yeah.
immediately. But when it's like, oh, I could do, I've got a handful of students, I've got a handful of gigs, and the studio is where I want to be the bulk of the time. But even with that, like, I don't want to mix for 60 hours a week. Like, that doesn't sound fun to me. But to mix a certain portion, sure, great. I love recording, I love tracking, and I love collaborating with people, and in the producer role. And I love playing bass. I love doing sessions and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. A lot of the creative types that I, talk to through through the Camerata or just through collaborations, a lot of them are kind of in the same boat mentally, where it's like, the ideal career would be one that's multifaceted and it's not just a single task or a single group of tasks that are being like hammered out 40 to 60 hours a week. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's and that's just kind of what you just said is kind of like a confirmation of that sort of creative mindset that not necessarily like a jack of all trades sort of thing, but more like a less narrow-minded approach to one's creative career.
Yeah, I think a certain amount of diversity nowadays is kind of expected too. Um, at least in the studio, and I think as a musician too. Like I think from talking to older cats and like teachers and stuff uh, from the music school, like it was you could be much more specialized back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I even mean like 20, 30 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Uh, there were just a lot more special. Like you could just be the best bassist. Like there was, I don't know, maybe there's still those guys who just play bass and that's all they do. Um, and that's great. But like I think nowadays, a lot of artists that you get hired by and stuff, like they expect you to do other things too. They
Hmm.
expect you to, I don't know, just be able to kind of wear different hats. Especially, I mean, I guess different instruments have different expectations. Drummers definitely are expected to like run tracks and do, run samples and stuff like that live, when they're playing live. And it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
wow, you have to learn, they have to have like a whole mobile setup for that kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, yeah.
Yeah, as a drummer myself, somebody who just, is constantly poring over different drummers who I admire. That is kind of a trend that I've seen like in the past 10 years where drum kits and studio setups as well have evolved into this weird sort of hybrid state where there's a lot of sampling that has to be done live. There's a lot of just pulling out these sort of electronically produced sounds that can't just be produced through an acoustic kit. Um, and I think it kind of ups the sort of standard when it comes to how would you say when it comes to one's operational ability of a drum kit. It's sort of like if you really want these big name gigs, like folks like Beck or something like that, folks who are touring. Well, not touring right now, of course, but within the past few years have been big touring icons. Then you got to be able to take both the acoustic approach. You got to be like super down on your instrument, but you also have to have that technical know-how with DAWs and sampling devices and all that jazz. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah. And I think, to piggyback on that, like you can also make yourself more indispensable and more attractive to get hired if you do learn more.
Oh, of course.
um, yeah, if you know different, just how to get different sounds out of whatever you do. If you're a guitarist, if you're a bassist, just working with pedals, with whatever, just to like diversify what you can offer. That's always been kind of something I've strive for, is to like when I get a gig or if I'm like subbing for a gig to like try to I mean, I you definitely it's a tricky thing if you're subbing for like a friend or something that you don't want to like take their gig.
You
And
don't want to
if
show them up.
well, you want to show them up in a way. I mean, not saying it in that putting it in that term, but
Right.
you definitely want to. I kind of look at everything, hopefully in a healthy way, but as an audition.
Hmm.
So like if I'm subbing for something, or I mean in the studio too, if I'm working with somebody, like it's if you impress them enough, you can get more work from it. Whether it's from them, whether it's from them recommending you, giving you a good review, like whatever it is, it's all an audition for another thing.
Oh yeah.
So I try to. I've always kind of looked at it that way, and again, hopefully not in an unhealthy way, and not trying to like I said, it's tricky. Like if you're subbing for someone that has the gig, you don't necessarily want to take their gig, and sometimes you get in that situation where you got to then ask the person like, "Hey, they off." It's I think it's considered proper if a friend gets you a sub gig, and then you're offered another gig from that band, that you at least check with them, with
Hmm.
your friend, and go like, "Hey, I got offered another gig. Like, is that cool?" Or is that can the word can get around if you're like just taking people's gigs.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
I mean,
sometimes that happens. It's just like you're a better fit or something, and it just depends on the situation.
yeah, the music scene, I guess with most creative fields within the, I guess, how can I put it? Artistic working fields. That's
Yeah,
not the most articulate way to put it, but you get what I mean.
yeah,
Um,
creative field.
it comes down to a lot of, it can be competition. And in fact, most of the time it is competition because, you know, there are a limited amount of larger scale groups, acts, artists who are looking for other artists to either collaborate with or hire as, session musicians, hire as writers. So it does become this kind of thing where I suppose a mindset develops where you're not trying to be the best, quote unquote, but you're trying to be um, you're trying to get gigs that other people would also most likely like. So,
Definitely.
um, yeah, I kind of want to ask you about that because you seem to have been in at least one circumstance where you sort of won this weird musical competition. Um, so I want to ask, like, is that a sort of mindset that you often come in conflict with? Like where you're actively sort of butting heads with musicians, or just becomes this kind of thing where, how would you say, where I guess the competition overrides, the artistic form itself.
I think that's an interesting question, and there's a lot of different levels to it. I definitely I think that competition. I'm a competitive person. Like it's just something I know about myself, but I also think it's important not to let that override like your character.
Hmm.
So like I definitely am not trying to like pull anyone else down to pull myself up. I'm trying to put at least that's not I mean that's definitely not how I look at it. I try to put the best version of myself out there and be as professional as I can, so when opportunities come about, I'm ready for them, and it's easy to for someone like that's hired me or thinking about hiring me to go, oh, he's going to be able to handle this.
Hmm.
um, I don't think I come in the only conflict, like I was kind of alluding to, is if you get in that situation um where you're like where somebody else has kind of recommended you for something, but they wanted it to be short term, and then you kind of like the band actually wants you now. Um, but like I said, I I think your network. I'm definitely not the only person who thinks this, but your network, as in the music industry, and I'm sure in a lot of creative fields, and really a lot of fields, your network is like your most important asset. So I definitely like don't want to do anything to like get a bad reputation. I think your reputation is like huge.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm definitely not trying to like take anyone else's gig um, in like a malicious sense. Uh, so yeah, I think a certain amount of being competitive is healthy. Um, yeah, I don't. Does that answer your question? I'm trying to
Yeah,
think.
yeah. I'm so sorry if I forwarded that question in a sort of awkward way. That's my
No, I
bad
was
on
just
that.
trying to figure out how best to answer it because there's so many different things that ways I could go with it.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I do appreciate that answer that you did give. Excuse me. I do appreciate, sort of this example of, how do you say, just being the best that you can be, and through that, acquiring gigs through character rather than through, well, other more deviant manners.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. I don't subscribe to like bad mouthing other. I have seen that, and it's really ugly, and I hate that just aspect of just humanity in general. There was one band, if you want a quick story, there was this one band. I'm not going to name names because that also wouldn't be cool. But there was this band that called me for like a last minute gig, uh, and the reason why, and it was a cover band, where it's like a four set a night cover band, so it was like 60 songs that I needed to learn in 3 days, which is like it's a lot.
oh yeah, that's
And
massive.
yeah, and the reason and that's happened actually multiple times to me. The reason that this particular one happened was because the band, and it was like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They had gigs. They needed, the bass player had quit. I think he quit maybe on a Monday, and they had Thursday, Friday, Saturday gigs. And not only did he quit and leave them high and dry, but he started calling up all the clubs that they had gigs at and like bad mouthing the band and saying like, oh, they don't have a sound system, and you should hire me instead of them, and I've got, they don't know what they're doing. I have all the, and it was like just hearing like a story like that, um just that's the ugly side of competition. And I definitely don't subscribe to that.
Yeah, that sounds awful. I'm
Yeah.
very happy to hear that you're not on that side of the playing field.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, if you don't mind us switching gears, there was
Sure.
something that I kind of wanted to go into, I guess, regarding your history, but also regarding, because we brought up a couple times, networks. I guess your creative network, your creative community, if you will. Um, I've just been taking a quick peek at your website, and you have a ton of playing credits. You've played with so many folks, and a lot of these folks I'm actually kind of familiar with. I see cities, or I saw cities on your page, on your, how did you say, your just big list of folks that you played with. Keith
Right.
Jacob, uh, yeah, Blackwater Jukebox is one of them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's all just. This is a whole bunch of like very diverse in terms of genres. Excuse me, a very diverse grouping of artists, and it spans the gamut from country to indie. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to ask how you started, and like, was it right after you graduated school where you were getting these gigs, or was it more of a slow sort of build up into getting these connections? Like, how did it start for you?
Sure. Well, that's the ones you're naming is all like LA. I mean, I started gigging um, a little, not really much in high school at all, uh, but a little bit in college when I was in St. Louis University in St. Louis, Missouri,
Hmm.
um, was when I first started gigging, and it was funny because I went to that school, and the first like I didn't know any musicians there. It doesn't have a big music program. I almost transferred out because it didn't have a big music program. But I put up like flyers, and like the only bands that hit me up were like Christian rock bands,
Hmm.
and I'm Jewish, so it was like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna work out. But
Oh goodness.
um, so I didn't really gig much until my senior year, I joined like two bands outside of the school, and that's when I first started gigging. I ended up after those bands broke up and I graduated school there. I went down to Florida and joined this band. That ended up not working out, but I was there for a few years, just kind of working in an office job, and played in a couple bands there in St. Petersburg, Florida, and then ended up quitting the office job and moving out to LA, which, like I said, is 10 years ago. And yeah, the music going to music school, that was the big, uh, like, kind of foot in the door um, to like the music industry and the music scenes and bands and stuff. So a lot of what I got early on were fellow students um, and just connections through the school. So like I was in school there for a year and a half and played mainly with just like other students and stuff like that. And then after I graduated, that was when it was like, all right, I just got to get as busy as possible um, gigging, and that's when like just get got a bunch of recommendations from different bands, and like you just kind of never know how things are going to come up. Like you're at one gig, and then some other band sees you and goes, "Hey, check us out," whatever. Here's my card, whatever. So a lot of it was just piggybacking, like just being busy led to being more busy, and there were different points in time where there was like 7, 8 bands that I was playing with,
Jeez.
and and some of them were like they'd have one gig a month or one every 2 months or something, and some of them were every week. Um, and then as I started getting like better paying stuff, that's when it started to become like less of the amount of bands and just more commitment to each band. Where like some of those cover bands that I joined, uh, just like they were booked every weekend, so it would be 2, 3, maybe even 4 gigs every week.
Right.
Um, and then the bummer for that was I really liked having a bunch of different projects, um, but I really wanted to get to that point where I was making enough money playing music to, I don't know, just do that and feel good about that. So
Oh yeah. That's the
um,
dream right there.
yeah, and now the cool thing about where I'm at now is I've got a lot of these connections still, uh, where I'm kind of just like there's no band that I'm so committed to that I can't turn down a gig. There was a little while there where it you felt like you were letting people down if you turned down a gig. Um, but now there's like at least when gigs come back. I mean, it was this is how it was before things shut down. Uh, there was like maybe 5, 6, 7 bands where I might be their first call, I might be their second call, their third call, or even fourth uh, as a sub, and that's a cool place to be because I still get to kind of play with a bunch of different people, but I don't have to feel like so committed to any of the bands. Um, yeah, so it's a cool place now, and I really hope that as gigs come back, that I'm still in that position. And then sometimes I'll get like one-offs. I'll get recommended from other players.
Hmm.
The best thing if you want to like gig more and gig and professionally and stuff like that is just finding other musicians who are doing that and like befriending them,
Right.
not in a weird creepy way, but just like a lot of the stuff I get is from friends, and then other ones are just like maybe other bass players that or maybe other instruments too, but a lot of times like other bass players that I might not even met in person, but just like got a recommendation through a mutual drummer friend or something or whatever, and then you just kind of like trade gigs, and you kind of like if someone gives you a gig, you try to get them one if you can at some point. Uh, you can definitely like kind of like get in someone's mind more by getting them a gig. So like I really love uh, hooking other people up with work, both for just the satisfaction of like, oh, that's so cool, I got somebody else work, and also for like the more opportunistic side of it too, which is like hopefully they help me out with something too, and then it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, I dig that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like that's part of being in a creative community. Like, I suppose doing your best to uplift the folks that you come in contact with as much as they uplift you.
Yeah, you can pull each other up and support each other. That's actually one of the things I really dig about the studio thing too, and I'm excited about going forward, is like being able to hook up my friends and stuff with sessions. I've already been able to do that here and there, and that's awesome when I'm like I'm providing like work for like a, and when I say a friend, like it's a friend who deserves it. Like I'm I like to reward people who are professional and take care of their shit,
Mhm.
uh, because that's what you should do, I think, as a professional of anything. So yeah, I really like that aspect, and look forward to being able to do that more, hopefully.
Awesome. So, you know, I'm not sure how much of the Camerata's like Instagram stuff you've seen, but a lot of the folks that we shout out and a lot of the folks that we communicate with are, sort of aspiring creators, up and coming creators. So I want to get 2 points of, I guess, advice or 2 points of sage wisdom from you regarding regarding building a network that can, how do you say, that building a network that can help you grow your career and kind of grow the opportunities that you have as an artist in the working fields.
Yeah, well, I guess you can decide how sage it is, but I, I heard the other. Oh, where did I hear this? I think this was from what you said just made me think of a quote I heard the other day from Saint Vincent, and it was a very simple thing that she was just like, make shit with your friends,
Mm,
and I was like, yeah, that's very simple idea, but I think it's really powerful. Um, and it's something that I'm trying to do more, and that I've I think I'm doing more now uh, during this pandemic, fun. But just trying to make things with other people. I think when you collaborate with other people, you your your ideas turn into other things, and you create relationships through that. And it doesn't always work, I mean, but I think you have to get out there. It depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're trying to be a totally independent artist, maybe, I don't know, nobody does it alone.
yeah.
So I think no matter what you're doing, building relationships, like everybody wants to work with people they like. So your attitude, I think, is kind of everything. And I think there are things that can only help you in the in life, but in the industry, such as just being on top of your schedule, of organization, of getting back to people. Those things, they just can only help you, and not doing it can kind of only hurt you.
Hmm.
Where I think that's overlooked a lot these days, especially uh, because it's so easy to forget text messages and stuff like that. And we all are guilty of it from time to time. But I think really trying to like make that uh, just a priority, being trying to be organized. Yeah, obviously, a lot of musicians and creatives organization is not necessarily their strong suit, but at least get it to a point where you're not losing relationships and gigs and opportunities because you don't have your shit together.
Right.
So I think really trying to like strengthen relationships in the industry and not and try to do it in a, do it in a genuine way. Like don't do it just to try to get somewhere, but like what's wrong with like just trying to like actually make friends with other people,
Hmm.
and it's another one of those things that just can kind of only help you both in the industry and just as a person. Like it's really cool to have a lot of connections um and be able to just like be around LA or wherever you are and like run into people and kind of like be tracking each other from afar, uh and being supported, like just be a good person. And I think that goes a long way.
Hmm.
um yeah, I don't know if I have any if if I have any sage advice, but that's definitely something that I think is important.
Oh no, man, that's like that's honestly something that I wish I kind of. I mean, it feels like the most obvious thing, right? Like
Right,
that's
yeah,
like music is something that you typically create with other people. So like, where is the? How is it not obvious that you would start off with your friends or with folks you meet in school or whatever? But it's I I really appreciate that as a form of sort of um, I don't know. It could be used. It's advice that can be used in so many ways. It definitely, for one, helps build your chops as a musician, especially if you're friends with people who might be more advanced musicians than yourself. Like it can really help you up your game as an individual artist. But then, of course, there's connections that can be made just through playing with different folks you meet. Um, and it's also about the camaraderie in the end and those sort of relationships that are built through art. At least in my personal experience, the relationships I've built through people that I've created music with have been some of the best relationships I've gotten to experience, and I'm still experiencing.
totally.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
So,
that's
oh,
kind of
my
what I
bad.
was. Sorry, I was just going to say that's totally what I was getting to. A lot of the best relationships that I've made with people are through music, and that's one of the things I look back on, especially like during tough times, and where you can't help but wonder, like, did I do the right thing being in the crazy music industry and stuff? And then you just kind of think about all the things that have like given me comfort is when it's like, yeah, but think about all like the great people that I've made like really great connections with. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, I just wanted to put a button on
Oh
that.
yeah, I dig it. All right, so we're going to start winding down this cast. However, we do have a little section at the end of each episode that hopefully you'd like to suppose participate in. We have a section where we just shout out one or more people within our creative community who are currently inspiring us at the moment, or who we are working with, or anybody who happens to be a part of the creative community that you're a part of. You just want to give them some props and throw their name out there.
Yeah,
This is the space for it.
great. I definitely am down for that for sure. Um, so yeah, I guess the projects that I'm still technically in, um, Salt Pedal is a great indie rock kind of surf, Latin stuff. Salt Pedal, Urban Grass is another
Mhm.
band I play with. Um, who else do I play with? The Rye Brothers, I still do gigs with. Greg and the Gallows. Um, those last two do a lot of both covers and originals around Southern California. uh, I
Sick.
I did so I did this. I played with a gig with Giovanni, who's this like concert pianist. Um, virtuoso, amazing pianist, composer, uh, that was supposed to be a 2 month tour actually in China um, at the end of 2019 when all this craziness started, and we did one gig and then the rest of the tour got canceled.
Mm.
So I don't know if I still am going to play with him, but Giovanni is amazing piano music if you want to check that out. Uh, I've got my own stuff under Evan Mykl that you can find on Bandcamp and Spotify and all that. Mykl. Trying to think. I also Sarah Winchester Band. I play with them. Uh, there's probably others that I'm forgetting because it's been so long since we've had gigs. Um, but some of the local bands I like to shout out too that I'm working on a debut out. I think it's going to be an album now. It was going to be an EP. Her name's Ruby. I'm not. I think she's still deciding what name she's going to release it under, but I think it's going to be either Ruby Hetherington or Ruby Adelaide, and that's been really cool stuff that I'm kind of co-producing and playing on, and we're working on her album right now. Uh, there's a bunch of other things like you can if you just kind of look at my Instagram at the underscore Spacemint.
Hmm.
Um, I try to post things that are released, like the 2 Hour Shower song that we talked about, and just release something or just mix something from a new artist named Gray Space. That's cool stuff. There's a bunch of things in the pipeline. Oh, and I'm working on uh, playing bass for my friend Andres Siepez, which is like uh, progressive rock instrumental, like kind of kind of crazy, like cool guitar melodies and stuff like that. And I played on 2 songs on his album that's coming out soon. I should have made a list before we did this to make sure I'm not missing anyone. I'm sure there's something out there. But if you know, you can always check out like Evan on the Bass, evanonthebass.com or thespacement.com or me on Instagram for my shameless plugs. And you can see like what I have going on. I've got those kind of 2 different pages.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to make a couple shout outs right now. I've got a whole bunch of awesome, folks in this community that I get the privilege of communicating with and I guess being friends with in general. I want to shout out, first of all, Hey, It's Me, Eileen, um, the artist name of a amazing visual artist out in the OC area, Eileen. She just recently opened an online store um, where you can just get a whole bunch of her awesome little prints and stickers of her beautiful. How would you? I always have a hard time describing her art. I'm gonna put like a little example up in the just in the video for this podcast, but it's very stylized and it's got sort of like a retro, not necessarily Art Deco feel, but gives me pretty retro vibes when I see it. Yeah, she's got a store. You can get prints and stickers and a whole bunch of cool stuff with her designs on it. I also want to shout out Hunter, my friend who goes by the name of Dasuo. I shout this guy out all the time, but Hunter, excuse me, yeah, Hunter just released a little collection of music. Um, ah, excuse me, that was me trying to get the shit out of my shoulder. Um, yeah, Hunter just released a new collection of music going by Patchwork 11. Um, I swear, Hunter drops music like every couple of seconds. But yeah, listen to that on Spotify. Listen to it on all the streaming platforms, Bandcamp, iTunes, what have you. Or is it Apple Music now? I'm sure it's Apple Music. Anyway, yeah, two of the amazing folks in this community that I wanted to give some props to.
Nice. Do you mind if I give one or two more quick shout outs that I thought of while you're talking?
Oh, go on, go ahead.
uh, Another band that I mixed and mastered a song for the end of last year, and I'm doing another one now. Is called Humbug. It's like an indie rock pop. Cool
Oh,
stuff.
sick! You're working with Humbug?
Yeah, I mixed their last song, and I'm working almost done with the next one right now. That's cool. You know them as well.
Yeah, yeah. I actually got to see them live, like one of the last shows I played before the pandemic hit.
Oh,
Um,
sweet.
yeah, yeah, they're awesome.
Very cool. Another one uh, we did a full video like 2 day. It ended up being like the weekend of the year last year because it would have been anyway, but it ended up being one of the only really cool things from last year. But it was like a 2 day kind of jamathon with like a bunch of different musicians in my studio that was released as Saucy Valentine, and you can check that out on YouTube. They released a bunch of video from those 2 days of recording at the Spacemint, which was awesome. My
Hell
friend
yeah.
Mike Zygon. And then one last thing that I just remembered. So I'm actually, and I hope this is okay because it's like slight competition for you. But I love talking music so much that I started my own podcast too.
Hmm.
And it's called Gig Stories. I haven't released any episodes yet. I've done a few of them, and I'm going to be releasing them in April. Uh, my own podcast. So
Oh, sick.
if you're not quite sick of me talking yet, you can check that out. I just kind of same kind of similar format. I just talk to other musicians, friends, and stuff like that. Just talk music, and I'm really interested in like horror stories from gigs and
Hmm.
stuff. So like I like to get into that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I mean, like, I'm not sure about competition for this podcast because we are mighty small at the moment. Um,
Got to
but
start
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to listening to it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so that's going to be about it for this cast. Again, this is Andres Marquez here with Evan Mykl. Yeah, this is probably going to go up in about a week and a half or so. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Camerata Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Camerata Los Angeles. We are always promoting local artists of all sorts, all mediums, and we hope to hear you again, or we hope that you hear us again on our next episode. Adios.